It's a pleasure to interview Frances Aloisio's other half, Christine Aloisio.
The other half, that's interesting. I feel like I'm a whole, though.
And I like that you clarified that. That to me is an empowered woman.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're an expert on Lemuria.
I'm an expert on my own experiences with the Lemurian temples on the California coast, between Cayucas, which is below Cambria, California, on the central coast, up to Big Sur, up to the middle part of Big Sur. And there's temples along there that are vortexes that the Lemurians started using because they're vortexes on the Earth's crust and lower into the Earth. And they use those temples as they knew they were devolving. As Lemuria was slowly sinking, they went to these temples to reconnect with Source. So these temples are very, very energetic for us today because we go there as we're evolving. So we're using those same energies to reconnect with Source at those vortexes.
Fascinating. And I'm really having an in-depth look at sentience. So does our sentience play into this process?
Our sentience is a part of all who we are and all who we were. The Lemurians were sentient as they were conscious beings. They were all different kinds of beings through the millions of years that they lived here before anyone came. And they lived here as conscious beings because they were always connected to Source. And that's what I feel a sentient being is constantly connected to Source, whether unconsciously or consciously. There's certain levels of understanding in consciousness how we connect to Source. So those who feel like we're separated now, when we separate ourselves from Gaia, we disconnect ourselves from Source. So Lemurians were always there because these Lemurians had 36 strands of DNA. That's a lot. So they were always with Source. So as they devolved, we came into being and now we're having to reconnect to those DNA strands.
So is it our separation from Source that is causing the suffering we see and feel?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because when you separate from Source, you deny your divine being. You deny who you truly are. So Source is who we are. We can say it's the creator, but my version is Source, the true source of the energy of the whole universe, of all the universes. The creator can be a creator of Earth, a creator of Jupiter, or creator of our universe. So I sort of differentiate them.
Okay. And that helps me clarify, actually. In terms of our emotional body and emotional intelligence, do you think that's a gateway to the shift in consciousness we so want for humanity?
Emotions are very, very important for us because that connects us to our ego, actually. Our ego is part of all of these emotions. And when we connect to the emotions, the ego is directing us. When we step away from the emotions, it's not that we're disconnected from the heart. When we have no emotion about it, we are objective. So we don't have to dive into the drama of something, whether it's an elation or whether you're feeling horribly chaotic. When you stand back, there is no emotion. There is only one connection to the heart. And that's what the Lemurians were about. They were connected to the heart. And emotions are really important for the ego. The ego needs them to direct that being in this third dimensional realm. When you step out of it into the fifth dimension, you can be observant. You can be in the heart constantly. And you don't need the emotion to carry you through.
The ego gets such a bad rap.
I know.
Actually, it really does, right? But
Poor ego.
Poor ego, because you do need it, and it's about the integration of everything.
Exactly, and you need it for this dimension. I feel the other dimensions don't use the ego. They don't use emotions. However, they're always in one feeling. The one feeling is joy. Our soul is pure joy. That's all it is. And joy is the highest vibration. Love comes after joy.
So in that way, if we can regulate our feelings and start to manipulate that emotion, that energy in motion, can we then start to be able to create a higher vibration of feeling in our general daily life?
I think that's a cognitive way of looking at it. To regulate an emotion is an ego way. Ego wants to regulate. Ego wants to have control. When you step out of ego, you're in a beautiful source. You're in your source. You're in your universe. So there's no regulation. There's only being. There's only true being of being in the truth of who you are, which is source.
Do you think that our sentience can act as a GPS system to get us connected to source?
Yes, I believe that's what we need right now. So many need to connect to that sentience, which is the consciousness of our trueness, of our heart. So sentient is a word that I connect to this reality. When there's another reality, there is a different kind of beingness. It may not be sentient. It may be a different type of timeline, a different type of consciousness. It may be simply something completely different that we are heading into right now.
Do you think that the Earth is a sort of a great cosmic lesson plan?
Absolutely. Darn it anyway. And we all come here and say, why did I come here? Why did I come here? And I've asked that myself many times. Why am I here? And I feel disconnected from source so many times that I have to go back to these vortexes. I have to go back to the feeling of these vortexes to get back into connection, And it's not only to the collective, because that could be a group within a group, within a group, within a group, but to source ultimately.
And these sacred sites you speak of in California and also in Malta.
Absolutely.
Can they help us connect?
Yes. And that's why I've come here. I came here to reconnect with who I was at a particular time. I followed that timeline. I wanted to be in connection to who I was at that time. And who was I? Another being, another personality, another sentient being. I wanted to reconnect to that so that I know who I was, so I know who I am now. I needed to reconnect to that. And that's what I did with the Lemurian temples. I reconnected to those because I knew in my heart that I was Lemurian like we all were, but I connected to that because it rang true for me. It rang so true that this is the way that I used to live all the time on that high level. So when I came into Atlantis, which I did at a certain time in my karmic representation, I came back into this karmic way of life, and I found myself in Atlantis where everything is grounded, everything is in the now, but it's always building, here, there, always in a state of motion. And Lemurians didn't need that motion. They were motionless. They were always in their heart. So they didn't need to move forward. They didn't need to move backward. They were always constant. And that's what I love, is the consistency of being constant.
Yes, I love that too. It sounds like such a balanced state, and that's what feels so difficult to achieve in third density.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is striving for that when we don't need to, when we put our focus on the higher vibration, which is right here. Fifth dimension is right here. You don't go anywhere. It's right here, but you step into it. So you're always moving into it when you're conscious of it and focus on it. Well, if you focus on the third dimension, that's where you're going to be. If you focus on the fifth dimension, that's where you're going. That's where you are. So you vibrate to that. Everything is a vibration. Everything.
And you mentioned timelines. How does your sentience help you be a match to certain timelines, like the timeline you wanted to experience here in Malta?
Oh, that's a good question. What I do is I receive information from my insights, and the information can be from another being. However, now that I've understood it more, I am that being. So I listen to that being who I am and said, this is something I need to move into so that I can see more of the truth of who I am. So when I was attracted here, I needed to see that, to connect with it so I can be this person right now that's sitting in front of you. I wanted to feel that. I wanted to know who I was at that time. And now I know I don't need to do that anymore because I reconnect with that center being here.
Okay. So you actively are using your subtle intuitive sense.
Absolutely. Every time I move around now that I see things and I feel things, I said, that's what brings me here. That's what makes me go. That's what makes me move on. That's what makes me do things in this timeline. And what I really came here for is to bring this timeline and this timeline together in balance and to bring it into my body, all of my bodies, not just my physical body. When you bring it into your physical body, it becomes very difficult. It becomes I can feel like the throbbing of the heart or the beating of the head when you have a headache because there's so much energy. I feel all of that. And my striving now is to step away from that and say, oh, there you are. Okay. I'm going to be here where I don't need to have all those feelings anymore.
And is that bringing you then closer to that balance or that integration that seems to be the name of the game right now?
Yes. It's an integration. It's an activation of our DNA, and activating and assimilating and integrating. We're bringing it all in at once. But first you have to activate it. And then you assimilate it into this energetic being that you are. And then you integrate it with everything around you. So the crystalline grid that we're on right now is activating our DNA into the crystalline reality. The crystalline rainbow diamond reality is what I've felt it when I've gone to different sites. That I just found another one on my mini walks on the Central Coast. To me, it looks like the symbol of an atom. The grid is around the atom, but the atom has a nucleus, and then the electrons move around it, always moving, and the protons are inside of it, holding it. So I feel like there's more of those kinds of grids out there, and I connect with them as I go to this special vortex that I found.
So you're quite visual in the way that you are sensing energy.
Yes, I can see it. I don't see it as like you can see your hand. I see it within my mind, within my heart center. And then it comes out into this timeline, this reality.
Do you think you have to feel it to then experience it?
That's a good question too. To feel it, yes. For me, that's how I deal with things. I have to feel them first in my heart. And once that feeling starts moving, I can feel it more coming out into my mind. So I connect my heart and my mind. And that's when I start drawing them.
And when you're drawing them, what are you drawing? Is this sacred geometry?
Yes.
It shapes?
Sacred geometry, the sacred geometry of spirals, the sacred geometry of triangles, geometry is of the sixth dimension. So I reach into the sixth dimension and pull them out and bring them onto the third dimension so that we can see them and use them to raise our vibrations. It's a different way of doing it, but I feel them first. I feel everything first. And when I move into a different vortex or I move into a different area, I know this is for me or this is not. I believe that if more people could do this to connect with their hearts, they will be able to do that, everything that we are able to do sitting here. They can bring it into and reconnect. That's what I think my role is right now.
Some people think maybe they couldn't make a difference on their own, or they think, oh, I'm not psychic, or I don't feel these things.
Yes.
I can't see them.
Yes.
What would you say to them?
Well, it's not being psychic. It's the tapping into your truth. And our truth is we are powerful beings. That's who we are. In every dimension, we are powerful beings. That's all we need to know.
Do you believe we're living in the age of a spiritual awakening?
I think we've already moved through it. We already moved through it and people are remembering. So the awakening is the remembering. To remember who you truly are. And that's always been sort of like my mantra, is to remember who you truly are. Stop what you're doing. Remember who you truly are.
I love the semantics or the etymology of the word remember.
Remember. Remember. And to bring it together, to reconnect the heart and the mind. The heart and the mind. There's a temple in right in Cambria where we live, and it's called the Divine Union Temple, and it reconnects the heart with the mind. And that's what Atlantis was. It was the mind. It brought everything out into the mind and it grounded everything here. And Lemuria is the heart. So the heart and the mind have to come back together in balance. That's why Francis and I have come together. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's just mind-blowing and expansive. And the heart and the mind, that's what needs to come into balance right now. That's what we're seeing for everyone.
Yes. And so you're saying it's the same on an individual level as it would be on the collective level?
Absolutely. And we bring it, as soon as we do it within ourselves, it comes into the collective, as soon as we do that.
And how might I live from the heart?
How might you live from the heart? Through feeling, through knowing every step that you take is sacred. Every step that you take is sacred. Everything that you do is sacred. Every word that you say is sacred. Every thought that you have is sacred. And then you bring your mind into it to bring it to life.
What can we learn from Atlantis and Lemuria now?
We can learn to bring balance back into the world. Atlantis was, like I said, of the mind. The Lemurians, after their downfall, wasn't their downfall, it was the continent that went down. A lot of them moved to Atlantis, and they influenced the Atlanteans on how to work with the heart as they were creating in that dimension. That's what we're heading for now. That's what we want now. That's what's happening right now, as bringing those two together. And that's what the heart and the mind is about. The yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine. And the feminine is rising up now to balance with the masculine, not to overtake, but to balance. We need that balance. We need the alignment.
And Malta represents the sacred feminine in a way? Or how does Malta come into play?
It's interesting because when I came here, all I could feel was masculine, masculine, masculine. And then someone said, well, the feminine is here as well. When I went to Gigantia, I felt the feminine there because it was built on that aspect of the nurturing of Gaia, And in other times, as the Atlanteans left, other cultures came in and used that temple as a goddess temple. And I was there as well. So I felt that I needed to go back to this goddess temple because that's who I am, as a goddess. So in this lifetime, as a feminine individual, I wanted to reconnect with the goddess. So I did that, but And then I met Francis, that brought me into the masculine so that I could merge the two and not have one rise above the next, because we walk together in tandem.
And tell me, if I want to hear more about Lemuria, do you have a website? And you've written a couple books as well.
Well, the website is Lemuria Energy Journeys. And the book that I wrote is a guidebook. It's called The Magic of Lemuria to the vortexes on the central coast of California. And also it talks about California and the energies of California, the chakras of California. The second book I wrote that Francis encouraged me to write is because I reconnected to Atlantis, and Atlantis, the crystal city of Atlantis. So my journey to the crystal city of Atlantis was my journey in this lifetime and all my other karmic lifetimes to re-find the crystal city of Atlantis on Malta. And so I connected to the beings of the crystal city, who told me about all the wonderful things that they were there, that was in the crystal city, that still exist. And that they know that we're coming to a time that we're understanding ourselves more. So they're coming to connect with us.
So Malta and its beautiful temples played a big role in Atlantis.
Yes, so much so. And the Atlanteans who had to flee when it was going down, some went to Tibet, some went to Egypt, some went all around the world. And a majority of them went into the crystal city of Atlantis. So that's where they're existing now, there in fifth dimension. It's an exciting book.
I have to read it. Brilliant. In terms of sentience and science kind of confirming or starting to confirm what spirituality and say maybe yogis, etc., have said for thousands of years, do you think there's a marriage and a union and an integration going on there?
I always think scientists of being more cognitives and sentient of being on the way to cognitive. Yogananda always used physicists to actually prove his metaphysical being and his beliefs. So he always wanted to marriage the two, as you say, bring them together so that those who are still of the left brain can understand it, because he was so much of the right brain. So Yogananda really was the first one, I think, to bring scientists and metaphysics together.
Amazing. All right. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to the conversation?
I think this is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your work in this world, because that's your role now. And I feel like you are bringing it out to the masses, as Francis and I have been working as well, to bring, and Chris, to bring this out into the masses so that they could have a better understanding of the truth in their heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got chills because what you say is just really moving and touching me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to me as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to cry. Thank you.